Hi, it's Glenn Dietzel here, and the editor-in-chief of Lifestyle Entrepreneur magazine. And today I'm going to be interviewing our feature cover story guest, Keld Jensen. Keld Jensen is the managing director of a listed Scandinavian country. He's also the former chairman of the Center for Negotiations for the Copenhagen School of Business. And thirdly, and among many of the accolades in what Keld does, he's also a guest lecturer at a lot of different MBA schools around the world in the area of trust, behavioral economics, impression management, and negotiation. So without further ado, Keld, thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your busy schedule to allow me to interview you and feature you prominently in Lifestyle Entrepreneur magazine.
Thank you.
Let's start off, first of all, why is knowing how to negotiate successfully absolutely critical for business owners, entrepreneurs today?
Well, it's a great question that many people are not really thinking about. What I usually answer to that question is that up to 80% of our communication, or what we consider communication, is actually a form of negotiation. So that means lots of people, especially newcomers in business life, often think that, hey, negotiations is when I'm sitting down and trading a new contract or agreeing to hire a new employee or buying some stuff from a vendor, but negotiation is so much more than that. Negotiation is when you meet your colleague in the hallway and you would like him to do some kind of work instead of you doing it yourself. It's when you're negotiating with your wife in the morning who's picking up the kids. It's where you're going on vacation. It's discussing your interest rate at the bank when you want to borrow it. People are surprised how much negotiation there is in their life. And we did a study 2 years ago back in Scandinavia and Europe where we discovered that the average person that really don't even identify they're negotiating are having between 10 to 12,000 negotiations per year. So it gives you an idea that negotiation, both as a toolbox, as a strategy, is essential for anyone that wants success in business life.
What makes you uniquely qualified to talk about negotiations?
I've done an incredible amount of mistakes myself. I usually base everything I'm writing and speaking about on my own experiences. I had a long career in the IT business, heading companies, being in sales, being in marketing, and at one point in the 80s, I was actually thinking that I was a pretty good negotiator. And then I met my mentor in those days, in 1996, who showed me in less than 2 hours that even though I was heading a public company, I was a horrible negotiator. And that makes me realize that you can improve so much on your negotiation. What I often meet, actually, Glenn, is I meet a lot of people that are what I would call unconsciously incompetent. And that's actually great because they don't know they can't negotiate. It's way better being unconsciously incompetent than being consciously incompetent, because then suddenly you know, oh, I can't do it. And what is really funny in this world, regardless what country you're in, is that the higher ranking you might be in a company, the more unconsciously incompetent you very are as a negotiator. I meet a tremendous amount of executives, CEOs, COOs, and so on that actually believe that when I'm this high leveled in a company, I must automatically be a great negotiator. And in some cases, that's just not happening. They're not a good negotiator. A lot of what I'm doing and a lot of what I base my advisory work on and the speaking is my own experiences, especially my own mistakes. It's based on the studies that we've been doing at Copenhagen Business School and Thunderbird University in the US. It is the PhD and postdoc professors I've had on board during all the studies in the theory. And then it's based on development since 1976, when the organization I'm heading today was established back in Stockholm in Sweden. Yeah, it's based on academic work and studies all the way back from 1976 in Stockholm, when the organization I'm heading was established, and combined with real world experiences in negotiation. So it's a lot of years, a lot of theory, and a lot of practical experiences.
How does your formula work? Maybe give us the Cliff Notes version, how it worked for entrepreneurs, business owners.
It's very simple, really. There's no rocket science in what we're doing, and that's the great thing. Most of my colleagues in the business who assisting companies on negotiation, either through training or advisory or whatever, tend to arrive with a toolbox. They think negotiation is a toolbox where you need to get the right tool at the right time to negotiate. And yes, that is necessary as well. But there's something even before that you need to address, and that is understanding that negotiation is a choice of strategy. It's an implementation of a strategy that is just as important as having a strategy in sales and communication and human resource and research and development. And I often having a great time, Glenn, having much fun when I arrive at a new client. And the first thing I'm asking the CEO about is, could you please share with me your official negotiation strategy? And you know what? I have probably in the last 15 years met 5 who could tell me what their negotiation strategy was all about. And 3 of them actually didn't have it right because they were actually not talking about a strategy, but just the way they conducted negotiation. So that means that the majority of companies out there, and even governmental institutions and authorities, haven't defined a strategy. So back to your question about the formula. One of the formulas is definitely, first of all, just identifying a strategy. And the next thing that we uniquely work with is the concept of smartnership. And that sounds like a great word, and it is, but it's basically just a headline saying that 2 + 2 equals more than 4. It actually equals 7, so even more than that. And that's because we have developed a financial model called necroeconomics, where we can prove that if you and I were negotiating, Glenn, there's an unused potential called necroeconomics that you and I not capitalize. We don't utilize that potential. So what we have proven with lots and lots of clients, and I've been writing about in several of my books, is we have actually a potential of up to 42% unutilized value in a negotiation that the parties involved are not capitalized. And it's very simple. It takes me less than 1 hour to describe to a client how we can work with it. But it requires, obviously, that they have to find a strategy, they want to do it, and they actually have the understanding on how to do it.
What would you say is the biggest mistake, the one biggest mistake that you see business owners making today when it comes to negotiating?
That's a great question. And the number 1 on the list would be what I call the Copernicus effect. Now, I don't know if you remember Copernicus, but many years ago back in Europe, he was this crazy guy that was challenging the Catholic Church, who was the ultimate power in Europe in those days, by saying that the globe is not center of the universe, because that was what the Catholic Church claimed. Now, if you remember the story, the Catholic Church got pretty annoyed. They actually started torturing the guy because he was really annoying, and then finally they executed him because he was obviously seriously annoying to the Catholic Church. Now, obviously, the Catholic Church has acknowledged that the globe is not the center of the universe and has officially apologized as well. You know, that happens. But anyway, why I'm calling it the Copernicus effect is that way too many negotiators in this world are extremely egocentric. They step into a negotiation and think about, what is my cost? What is my liabilities? What is my risk? What is my potential? What is my profit? And they tend to forget there's a human being sitting on the other side of the table that has a body temperature about the same as their own. They don't listen, and they don't use what I call active listening, that is asking questions. So out of all the mistakes in the world, I would actually point to that one and saying just being egocentric and not listening might be the biggest mistake. And I've seen a lot of great negotiators out there, Glenn, that are really good negotiators simply by listening. They don't even talk a lot. They simply just listen, and once in a while ask a qualified question, and then they listen again for another 5 minutes. So getting information basically in negotiation, that's the key for real success.
What would you say are, let me ask this a different way. What's the one question? You mean, you've had a chance, you're a prolific author, you're a speaker all around the world, you've been interviewed who knows how many times. What's the one question that you wish you were asked that you've never been asked before in the area of negotiations?
The one question I've actually never been asked and I wanted to get is, should executive level, should the CEO implement a strategy on negotiation? Nobody has ever been asking me that question. And the reason for that, Glenn, is that, as I said earlier, executive levels in so many organizations, first of all, they believe that they are capable of negotiating themselves. And secondly, they don't appreciate and understand the importance of having a negotiation strategy at the same level, as I mentioned earlier, as sales, marketing, communication, and so on. So that's the one question that I would love to get some more, when, how top executives should implement an official negotiation strategy.
What's your answer to that question then?
Top executives, CEOs, and CEOs of the corporation for negotiation. That is the question I've never received and should have got. But again, as I said earlier, a lot of top executives don't feel that they have the need, they don't understand the importance of a strategy, and that means they don't implement the strategy either.
What would you recommend to our viewers right now as the first actionable step that they should take?
The first step they should take is actually identifying when and where are you negotiating. As I said earlier, so many negotiations are going on that you don't even realize is a negotiation. So the first step is actually sitting down, just look at your calendar and identify in what situation during the day am I actually negotiating. When is it just a communication, a presentation, or meeting, or when is there negotiation as part of my dialogue with another person? And then I would say another thing, which is a very, very basic and simple tool, and that is before entering any kind of negotiation, regardless whether it's private with your kids or your wife or husband or whatever, or it's business-wise, you have to define a starting point, you have to define a goal, and you have to define your threshold. That means you need to know where you're coming from, you need to know what you want to achieve, and you need to have addressed your walk-away scenario. And the reason I'm saying this and sharing this very, very simple tool is I meet so many negotiators that don't actually know what their starting point might be. They don't even know what they want to achieve in a negotiation, and they have definitely not identified when would I walk away and say no thank you. So that's the basic. And what I very often say, Glenn, to my clients is that if you don't know these three, stay away from the negotiation. You're not ready.
Keld Jensen, thank you very much for your time and the great interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.